group of angry demonstrators.
Who will feed us? And what about our children?
Workers who are fighting for their jobs.
We want to work. We can't lose our jobs.
A sad, but now a common sight in Europe struck by an economic crisis. But the case of the Ilva factory is nonetheless unusual. Here, the choice given to the workers is brutal: a job or your health. The Ilva factory in the south of Italy is the biggest steel production site in Europe. 9 million tons of steel are produced here every year. 1/3 of Italy's steel output comes from here. But not for long. The factory is running on borrowed time. An Italian court has ruled to close it down. According to the judge, the factory is responsible for an environmental catastrophe that threatens the population of an entire town. For over 50 years now, the people of Taranto in the Puglia region of Italy have been breathing polluted air, an air laden with toxic particles. Piero Mortalesi used to work for the Ilva factory. He spent 30 years working in the blast furnaces. Today, Piero is furious. He gave us an unusual meeting point on a motorway slip road. He wants to show us something. Over on that hill, the drama engulfing the town becomes obvious.
Here you can see the houses. In this neighborhood called Tamburi, the children are born with respiratory problems. And over there, not even 300 meters away, is the factory's mineral stockpile.
The mineral stockpile is where several tons of the iron ore used for making steel are stored. A fine powder that gets caught up in the slightest breeze. And yet, it is in the open air with absolutely no protective covering.
And look there, more pollution.
The factory's chimneys throw out steam 24 hours a day. A dramatic spectacle, but pretty anodyne. But Piero knows where he's looking. Behind the steam, we can see black and red smoke. More discreet, but infinitely more polluting. From images filmed clandestinely in the factory, we can clearly see the depth of industrial waste, released into the atmosphere without any filtering. A smoke filled with pollutants from combustion. When the wind blows, all the waste particles land here in the neighbourhood of Tamburi. 18,000 people live in Tamburi, not far from the factory. For the people here, the pollution is part of daily life.
Look at that, all that dust that's collected here. It's coming from over there, the other side of the hill.
Every morning, Maria starts her day with the same routine, sweeping away the dust that settled overnight.
Where do you think it's come from? This is mineral dust.
A lost cause. The dust covers Maria's garden 365 days a year, unrelentingly. Not far off, at the bottom of the hill, is the Bay of Taranto. It used to be well known for its mussels, but today the mussel farmers have all left. The mussel farms have been abandoned. Fishermen like Tommaso Pulpito remain, but in the bay, overshadowed by the factory's chimneys, the fish are few and far between.
I know 20 years ago it was very different. But Ilva just keeps expanding. We can't fish anymore because of the factory. We're losing our livelihood.
The pollution is everywhere in Taranto. Over the years, the environmental campaigners have become more and more active.
Look, a simple magnet.
Alessandro Marescotti was one of the first campaigners to get involved. Thanks to his unceasing studies of the area, he has finally managed to attract the attention of the courts. This is one of his favourite experiments.
Questa polvere non si stacca più.
Look, you see, this dust just doesn't drop off. It remains stuck to the magnet.
Persiste.
This dust, according to the court reports, contains lead, palladium, nickel and dioxins. And, of course, iron, which is why it sticks to the magnet. This is not any old dust. When it gets into your lungs, it can cause disease. Look, another thing about this dust, it sticks to your hands. The children are breathing this dust when they play outside, and the dust sticks to their hands and gets under their nails.
Polychlorinated biphenyl, antimony, lead, the list is long. Chemical substances that are highly toxic. And yet, they can be found everywhere, even in the public parks and playgrounds.
This area is contaminated. It's been closed. We can't go in.
A small gesture from the town council. Plastic sheeting hurriedly put up at the end of the summer. A derisory protection for the local inhabitants.
As a mother, I have a right to know. Do you realise I can't ignore the fact that my son's hands are covered in dust when he plays football, a dust full of lead and other carcinogenic substances?
After years of silence, people are starting to talk. Grazia Parisi is a paediatrician who has been treating the children of Tamburi for over 15 years. She says the health problems start at birth.
The situation here for the children is dramatic. At only 1 or 2 months old, they're already suffering from allergies. Only a few months old and they're already asthmatic. I see more and more children younger than 1 year old with serious respiratory problems.
And some of the more serious cases involve tumours or leukemia. The Fanelli family have paid a heavy price with the factory.
My father fell ill when he was 59, just after having retired. He died a few months later from lung cancer. He'd worked at the steelworks all his life. He too was a victim of this industry that makes us breathe this unhealthy air every day. My father always wanted me to work in the factory, but I always refused.
Even without working there, one can suffer the consequences. The Fanelli family have lived close to the factory for 20 years, and one of their daughters fell ill.
A living nightmare, acute leukemia.
This disease is exacerbated by breathing solvents like benzene, a substance found in large quantities in Taranto. After 3 years of intense treatment, Anna Chiara has recovered.
I knew a lot of the children at the hospital because they came from Taranto.
I'm convinced that her illness is due to the factory. The judges have the evidence.
The evidence is here in these epidemiological studies. The number of cancers in Taranto is 15 to 30% higher than the national average, and the number of related deaths is 10 to 15% higher. The report states that the continuous emission of chemical substances into the atmosphere is the cause of the degenerative phenomena in the population, potentially causing death. At the end of July, the judge in charge of the case placed the factory under sequestration. The owners, the Riva brothers, who come from a big industrial family from the north of Italy, have been placed under house arrest. The court has ordered the winding down of the factory's activities that pollute the most. Today, the management are playing for time and refuse to close down production. The managing director agreed to see us. We asked one very simple question. Does he admit that the factory has a negative impact on the health of the inhabitants of Taranto?
No, absolutely not. We do not accept that what the report says is absolutely sacrosanct. The environmental impact of a large steel works like Ilva can always be improved. But that said, we do not accept that Ilva is responsible for the state of health of the inhabitants or the environment of Taranto.
Ilva can count on the support of the government, who is determined to help keep the factory running. Ilva is indeed the town's main source of employment. 20,000 people work either directly or indirectly for the steelworks. Shutting the works down would result in an economic disaster. The management is using this argument to explain their inaction. For the employees, the choice is limited. It's either their health or a job. Valerio Darlo starts work at 7 a.m. every day.
It's a game of ping-pong between the justice system and the government, and we are stuck in the middle.
Every morning, Valerio wonders if he'll be able to work or if he'll find the gates to the factory closed. As a union member, he demonstrated in favour of keeping the factory open, despite the obvious health risks. He gave us an example that perfectly illustrates this paradox.
I have a workmate with a daughter who has cancer. She has to have intensive treatment. Of course, her health is a worry, but if the factory closes, what will he do? He has to take his daughter to hospital 100 kilometers from here. How is he going to pay for petrol if he loses his job?
Valerio is resigned. He knows the power struggle between the justice and the factory may last quite some time. Meanwhile, the workers and the locals continue to breathe in the toxic dust from the factory. We meet again with Piero, the retired steelworker, in the Tamburi cemetery that sits in the shadow of the factory's chimneys. Many of his co-workers are to be found here, having died prematurely. On their tombstones, there is a coat of red dust, a dust of iron particles. In Taranto, one cannot escape the pollution, not even in the cemetery.